Welcome to our journey through Guyana, a country of lush rainforests and vibrant culture. It's my first time here, but for Suma, it's a return to her birthplace that she left when she was just 7. Join us as we explore the land where the Caribbean meets South America. While there was some sightseeing involved in this trip, the main reason for the visit was for Suma and her parents to visit relatives, especially Suma's grandma. We thought our trip to Kitur Falls was starting on this Beechcraft 1900, but instead we ended up on this Cessna 208. It's sort of funny because one of the locals had told us the only reason he never visited Kitur Falls was because he didn't trust the rickety old airplanes they used to get there from Georgetown. When we showed up and saw the new Beechcraft, we thought maybe his fears were unfounded. This Cessna 208 turned out to be just fine, but it was a little bit more of an adventure getting there.
My beautiful country, so special to me. There's no other place I wanna be. Travel the old world, see plenty country. None of them not better than GT. Girl, I want to bring you here, show you the atmosphere and the river so clear.
The flight from Georgetown out to Kitur National Park was a really pretty ride, and while the scattered thunder showers did make for a little bit of a bumpy ride, it also made for a much prettier flight.
Baby, come let we go to Guyana. Come let we go to Guyana, Dulhania.
This was definitely the smallest airstrip I've ever landed on.
Come let we go right away, Dulhania. Come let we go right away. Let it go now. Let it go.
Nestled in Kitur National Park, amidst the breathtaking Amazon rainforest, Kitur Falls is the world's largest single-drop waterfall. According to Patamana Indian legend, Kitur Falls was named for Kai, a chief, or Toshao, who acted to save his people by paddling over the falls as an act of self-sacrifice to Makanema, the Great Spirit. Kai was the chief's name, and Tur means falls. So when you say Kitur Falls, we're actually being a bit redundant saying Kitur Falls Falls.
And the people so nice, why we call it paradise. You have to be here.
I mentioned earlier that Kitur Falls is the world's highest single-drop waterfall. It's about 226 meters high, or 741 feet high. And for perspective, that's about 4 times as high as Niagara Falls.
Dulhania, Dulhania, come let we go right away. Dulhania, come let we go right away. Let it go now. Let it go. Let it go now. Let it go. If you love Guyana, put up your hand. If you love up your land, man, turn up your hand. If you love Guyana, put up your hand. If you love up your land, man, turn up your hand now. Put up your hand and turn up your hand now. Put up your hand and turn up your hand now. Put up your hand and turn up your hand now. Put up your hand and turn up your hand.
After arriving at Kitur National Park, we had a short hike through the rainforest to make it to the rim of the falls. Along the way, we were introduced to something called a toilet paper plant. I can't remember the proper name for it, but you can guess what it's used for. It is surprisingly soft and it feels a lot like toilet paper. The guide did warn us that there's another plant that looks a lot like this that you really want to avoid because the end result is something like poison oak.
Can't wait till I touch down, my sweet Guyana. Link up with my friends and family. It's a long time I've been waiting, feels like forever. One people, one nation, one destiny.
All things must end, and so too with our visit to Kitur Falls. The flight back out was something I didn't quite expect. We flew out for quite some time, actually below the ridge line of the surrounding valley walls, and that was pretty interesting. It's something that I've only done in the military before.
Proudly, you could never take that out of me. And I rep in my homeland from USA to London. Believe me, I'm a proud Guyanese. Georgetown, Guyana, Corby's the Marara. We going down to straight to Eso.
In the background music, this guy keeps mentioning a place called Eso Area. I'll touch on this a little bit more later, but I found this very interesting that there is a serious dispute going on between Venezuela and Guyana. And Venezuela is claiming about 2/3 of the total land area of Guyana. And it's quite possible there will be a war over this in the near future. I hope not.
And when them people ask me,
Like many Americans, until fairly recently at least, all I knew about Guyana was what I saw in the news coverage as a kid about Jim Jones and the murder-suicide massacre at Jonestown. It's been really interesting learning more about Guyana. For example, I did not know until I visited there that Jimmy Carter is held to this day in extremely high regard for his role in helping to establish Guyana as a democratic republic. Also, geographically, there's some very interesting features. For example, Guyana is the only country I've ever visited that it has a coastline, but not a clearly defined coastline. As you can see in this photo taken from our hotel, Guyana has extensive mudflats and mangroves that keep the coastline from being clearly defined. Also, Guyana only has a population of about 800,000, so it's one of the least densely populated places I've ever visited. And finally, something I found very interesting, and I actually didn't even know this even though I've been to South America several times. Guyana is one of only 4 countries in South America that exist entirely in the Northern Hemisphere, the others being Venezuela, Suriname, and French Guyana. On every trip to Guyana, Sumus Family does some good works for a group of local kids who are unfortunately very underprivileged. This was a first for me, at least doing it in this way, but it's something I would like to incorporate into any of our upcoming trips. Planning for this started well before we left the U.S. We bought bags of candy for the kids. Of course, we bought more while we were in Guyana, along with necessary supplies to make gift bags for the kids. We had food catered on the day of the event, and we had small envelopes where we put in a small amount of local currency for each of the kids. The kids were adorable, thankful, extremely well behaved, and I loved the way they looked out for each other, making sure no one was left out.
one people, one nation, one destiny.
I mentioned the Eso area earlier and how Venezuela is claiming this territory as its own. The patriotism of the Guyanese people is on ready display to defend this area, and fortunately the World Court has ruled that this does indeed belong to Guyana.
Guyana is my country, and I'm saying it proudly.
One of the things that caught my eye before even landing while coming into land in Georgetown was how colorful many of the buildings and houses are in Guyana.
I'm a proud Guyanese. Georgetown, Guyana, Burmese, Demerara. We going down to straight to Essequibo.
I also found the Guyanese buses to be interesting. When I first saw these, I thought they were just custom paint jobs on minivans, but you see the point of origin and the destination on the left and right of the bus number on each of these buses. Traffic in Guyana is a special kind of challenge. It's a sort of a cross between driving in London, Bangladesh, and New York City. There's lots of horns being blown constantly. You drive on the wrong side of the road, at least from an American perspective, and even though there are traffic laws, a lot of people just ignore the traffic laws, so it's quite an adventure.
Come let we go, baby, come let we go to Guyana, come let we go to Guyana, Dulhania, Dulhania, Dulhania.
One of the other interesting driving adventures in Guyana is driving across the Demerara Harbor Bridge, which is over a mile long and is the world's longest floating bridge. And not to be outdone, even the cows get into the traffic jam business in Guyana. I'm glad I got to see Guyana for the first time and was happy to share the time with Suma. The only thing I want to do differently next time is spend less time in the capital city of Georgetown and more time exploring the natural beauty of the Amazonian rainforest, rivers, and wildlife.
So clear, and the jungle atmosphere, and the people so nice, why we call it paradise. You have to be here.